Hello everyone, welcome to this video. So as the PMP exam is all set to transition from its current PMBOK 7th edition to the PMBOK 8th edition in July this year, I know many of you will be trying to clear the exam within the next 3 to 4 months. And on the other hand, some of you might be thinking of waiting until July 2026 to take the exam in its new format, which is perfectly fine as well. Now, to help both of you manage this transition smoothly, I will be doing some bonus PMP exam questions and answers practice sessions like these over the next few months. And the intent of these sessions would be to practice the types of questions common within the exam syllabus, both for the current format of the exam and the new format of the exam. Because, believe it or not, even with this new transition, about 70 to 80% of the PMP exam syllabus will still stay the same. So regardless of whether you plan to write the PMBOK 7th edition or let's say the PMBOK 8th edition of the exam, these practice sessions, in addition to my regular monthly Q&A sessions, are going to help you prepare for the PMP exam with the right mindset. So 5 questions common across both the PMBOK 7 and the PMBOK 8 syllabus. Let's get started.
Okay, so the first question, guys, pause the video, read the question properly and try to answer it before moving forward. Right, so we'll start solving the question. So as step number 1, we will first read the question, read the options and try to categorize it as a type 1 or a type 2 question, right? And while reading the question, we have to ensure that we have to read the question word by word. So make sure you don't skim through the question, okay? Right, so you have been reassigned from a completed project into a new project as the project manager, okay? You find out that there are some conflicts between a few stakeholders of this project. So in the new project, you find out that there is a few conflicts that's happening between the stakeholders. Susan, the quality manager, has been communicating directly with the project team, providing them instructions over meetings, emails, and memos. Okay. However, the project team has kept on working with the baseline plan, ignoring Susan's inputs. This has caused Susan to escalate the issue to the project sponsor. Okay. Now the sponsor is concerned about Susan's behavior and also about the low morale in the project team. What should you do as the project manager? Right, so there are 4 options. Now, if we see the stem of the question, there is a scenario and it's asking that what should you do as the project manager? So it is hinting to a type 1 question, which is about the ideal project manager behavior framework. Okay, now before evaluating the option, if you have seen the previous video, we have to make sure that we need to follow the positive bias principle. Now, what is the positive bias principle? It means that we will not reject any option without solid grounds of reasoning. Okay, so as long as I'm not able to find a solid, sane ground of reasoning to reject an option, that option will stay on the table, right? So with that in light, let's start evaluating the options. Option A, perform a root causing of the issue as part of the investigation. Now, it may seem a very dry option to many of you, but mind that root causing a problem is a key skill of a good project manager. Okay, so we'll hold this option for now. Option B, call a meeting and invite Susan to discuss the project communication plan. Now, some of you may say that if you invite Susan to the communication plan discussion, probably her behavior will correct. Okay, so we'll hold this option for now. Okay, let's move on to option number C. Advise your team to stick to the baseline plan and let you deal with Susan. Okay, now that is not a preferable approach, guys. Okay, so that way the message you are sending to Susan is you do not involve your team in terms of the discussion with the stakeholders, right? So that way the team will always try to assign you to some problematic situations when you are dealing with the stakeholders, and always feel that the project manager will always be dealing with difficult discussions whenever it comes in a project. Okay, so as a project manager, you don't want to set that expectation with your team, right? So option C is incorrect. Let's see option D. Perform a off the record conversation with Susan and resolve her concerns personally. Now, in a corporate environment or a professional environment, guys, you do not do such discussions which are off the record. Okay, so this is a red flag word which should immediately start to ring alarm bells within your mind. Okay, and also solving something personally is very different from solving something involving the team, involving the whole corporate environment which you are working with, right? So this way of dealing with problems, which option D is mentioning, might be okay in a personal or informal environment with your friends or relatives, but in a corporate project environment, this is not the preferable approach. Okay, so we'll eliminate option D as well. Now, after the first round of iteration, we are left with option A and option B. Now, if we closely look at option B, guys, calling a meeting and inviting Susan to discuss the project communication plan may not give you the intended results. Okay, now I'll tell you why. Now Susan may come into the meeting and say that, you know what, okay, I have listened to your communication plan, I will try to abide by it as much as possible, but you know what, you need to address the concerns I am having, and I feel that your project team is not taking the considerations of quality into your project deliverables. Now how will you answer that? So in this situation, just discussing the project communication plan might not be the best approach, because of the primary reason that it will not resolve the concerns that Susan is having. And you know what will resolve the concerns that Susan is having? It is by performing the root causing of the issue as part of the investigation. Maybe you have missed out a critical stakeholder from Susan's team. Maybe you were not able to identify Susan as a critical stakeholder in the identify stakeholder stage, in the initiation stage of a project. Okay, so all these data will come up if you do a good root causing of the problem and try to solve the issue at its core. Okay, rather than maybe just calling Susan in a meeting, or maybe just telling your team not to listen to what Susan is saying and continue with the way they are doing the project, etc., etc., right? So for that reason, guys, option B is an incorrect option, and the correct answer to this question is option A, which is to perform a root causing of the issue as part of the investigation, which links back to the core project management behavior framework that a good project manager always tries to solve a problem from the root cause, and they don't solve a problem superficially. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is option A. Okay, so question number 2, guys. Pause the video, read the question, and try to answer it before we move forward. Right, so let's start solving this question, guys. So this question is typically a question which is testing your understanding about agile methodology. Okay, you can't like typically classify this as a type 1 or a type 2 question, because this is a question which is directed towards testing your subject matter expertise. Okay, so basically you need to know what these terms mean. Okay, so what is sprint planning, what is fishbowl window, what is feature driven development, what is a spike, etc., etc. So I would recommend here to watch the videos on my YouTube channel where I have discussed such critical topics about agile, which will be important from a PMP exam standpoint. Okay, so anyways, let's start solving this question together. There has been a merger of leadership between two tech firms, Social Space and Smart Cloud. Okay. As a result of this, the developers and the coding resources of both the companies are currently working across multiple agile teams for a common portfolio of projects. Okay. So quite a generic scenario where two companies have merged and the resources of the two companies are now clubbed together working towards a common portfolio of projects. Which is the best suited agile practice to ensure seamless release planning between the teams? Okay, so there are four options given. So the only way you'll be able to answer this question is if you know what is a sprint planning, what is a fishbowl window, what is feature driven development, and what is a spike. Okay, so let's go one by one. Sprint planning. So sprint planning is something which is very generic to all agile projects, right? So sprint planning is the planning phase of a iteration. Okay, so when you start an iteration to deliver a version of a product, you do the planning of that sprint before you start the actual iteration process, right? So that way it is a quite generic terminology, and it is nowhere specific to this scenario where two companies have merged and you have a common set of objectives to be achieved with two different set of teams. Okay, so the teams of Social Space on one side and the team of Spark Cloud on the other side. Okay, so that way sprint planning is something which you do anyways in agile projects. Okay, and it has no link to this scenario or to this context, so that is why this is an incorrect option. Fishbowl window, that is an incorrect option as well. So if you know about fishbowl window, guys, so it is a type of a communication channel which is established either to brainstorm an idea or to enable virtual connectivity across agile teams who are not co-located. Okay, so if you don't know about fishbowl window, guys, I would recommend that you go and study about fishbowl window in agile projects. Okay, so that way this option is incorrect. Okay, now what is a feature driven development? So, feature driven development, guys, is an agile software development methodology that focuses on delivering features incrementally. It involves a 5-step process like domain walkthrough, design by feature, building by feature, code inspection, design inspection, etc. etc. Feature-driven development is generally applicable for large companies and when there is a complex exchanges of information that is planned to happen between various agile teams working with a common objective. Okay, the development process in a feature-driven development is organized around feature items that collaborate to deliver specific features, ensuring a disciplined and efficient approach to software planning. So that way, guys, this option seems a very reasonable option to me, and we'll park this option for now. Next, let's talk about option D, spike. So what is a spike, guys? So in Agile, a spike refers to a time box task or investigation undertaken to explore and address technical or design uncertainties related to a user story or a feature. So basically, a spike is type of a brainstorming event which you do in focused groups to analyze a complex user story or a complex feature in a iteration or in a backlog, right? So now with that, if you know about spike, you know that this is also an incorrect option because in this scenario, guys, nowhere it has been stated that there is something of a brainstorming that's happening with a user story or a feature as a result of this merger. Okay, so spike is totally out of context in this scenario. Okay, so that way the correct answer to this question is option C, which is feature driven development. So the reason I discussed this question as a part of this exercise, guys, is to help you understand the importance of subject matter expertise regarding the topic of Agile when you are preparing for your PMP exam.
So if you are finding the session helpful, please press the like button and subscribe to this channel, PMP with Ray. It's surprising that more than 70% of you who watch these videos on this channel are not yet subscribed, okay? So your support to help this channel grow will be highly appreciated. And now let's move on to the next one.
Question number 3, guys. Pause the video, read the question properly, and try to select an answer before we solve this together. Okay, so let's start solving the question. A subcontractor is uncertain about the timeline estimates of a work package which needs to be committed to the project manager for a hotel refurbishment project. Okay, it has come out of a brainstorming session that the work package will take 28 days to complete using predictive methods, 12 days to complete with Agile, and 18 days to complete using a hybrid approach. How much should the subcontractor quote as time needed to complete the work package using the triangular estimation technique? Okay. Now, the reason why I have put this question as a part of this exercise, guys, is to help you bust the myth that in the PMP exam, you will not have any numerical questions. Okay. There will be definitely numerical questions in the PMP exam, and they might test your understanding about the different topics of estimation techniques, different topics of critical path methods, maybe different topics of earned value management, etc. etc. So the only difference is previously in the PMP exam, the questions were very direct, but over the changes that has happened to the exam over the last few months, the type of numerical questions that you will get in the exam will now be more application oriented, linked to a project management scenario, as you see as an example with this question. Okay, now let's come back to this question. So it is a very straightforward question, guys. It is asking you that as a triangular estimation technique, how much will be the estimated time where you have the pessimistic estimate as 28 days, optimistic estimate at 12 days, and the most probable estimate as 18 days. Okay, now if you know the triangular estimation technique formula, this question is a cakewalk for you. Okay, so what is the triangular estimation technique? It is your pessimistic estimate plus your most probable estimate plus your optimistic estimate divided by 3. So it's basically a 3-point estimation in the framework of a triangle, and that is why the formula is P plus M plus O by 3. So if you apply this formula with P is equal to 28 days, M is equal to 18 days, and O is equal to 12 days and divided by 3, the correct answer to this question is option A, which is 19.33 days. Okay. Now a quick disclaimer. Please do not confuse between the beta distribution and the triangular estimation. Okay. I would like you to put in the comment section of this video that what according to you is the estimation formula when you are using a beta distribution estimate. Okay. And you are not using a triangular estimate. Let me see how well you are prepared for your PMP exam. Okay, I will hide the correct answer within the comment section below. Now back to this question. Using this formula, the correct answer to this question is option A, which is 19.33 days. Okay, so question number 4, guys. The drill remains the same. Read the question and try to answer it before we solve it together. Okay, so let's start solving the question. Remy has recently been inducted as a project manager in an agile project for an organization undergoing agile transition. Okay, so the organization is transitioning from a waterfall or a predictive way to a agile way of working. Remy wants to build an ideal agile team with a good distribution of T-shaped and I-shaped individuals. How could Remy be sure whether the agile team possesses a good representation of T-shaped individuals? Now, to answer this question, it is very important that you understand the basic agile terminologies, right? So, who is a T-shaped individual in an agile project? Who is an I-shaped individual in an agile project, etc., etc. Now, if you don't have that understanding, you will be having a very difficult time while solving such type of questions. Okay, so it's of utmost importance that you understand and read the basic terms and terminologies related to agile projects. Now, as part of this question, let's try to summarize the basic definition of a T-shaped individual and a I-shaped individual in an agile project, right? Now, in context of agile project teams, the terms T-shaped and I-shaped refer to the skills and expertise of individual team members. Okay, these concepts are often used to describe the diverse set of skills and collaborative abilities of team members in an agile project. So when it comes to a T-shaped individual, these type of people has a broad range of skills and knowledge, which is the horizontal part of the T, and deep expertise in one or more specific areas, which is the vertical part of the T. Okay. This means that they have a primary skill or domain in which they excel, but also they possess a willingness and capability to contribute and collaborate across different areas of expertise. However, an I-shaped individual has deep expertise in one specific area, but they lack the breadth of skills and knowledge in other domains. So when it comes to the contribution of T-shaped individuals in an agile project, these kind of individuals can collaborate more easily across various roles and tasks, promoting a better understanding of the entire project. So you can look at a T-shaped individual as a person who is sort of a delegated project manager or a mini project manager per se. Okay. However, when it comes to the I-shaped individuals, these type of individuals bring deep domain knowledge and specialized skills to the team, which is crucial for tackling complex issues and driving innovation in specific areas. Now, if we talk of an example, let's say you are a project manager and you are designing an equipment which will be packing sachets of shampoo. Okay. Now, in this scenario, the T-shaped individual would be the machine design engineer who will not only design the machine but also will understand the interfaces in which the machine will interact with the packaging material, the machine will interact with the electronics and communication, the machine will interact with the raw materials, which is the shampoo which you are packing, etc., etc. Okay. Now, in this same project, who would be some I-shaped individuals? They would be, let's say, the packaging engineer who has a very, very deep knowledge about the type of packaging that will be most suitable for the machine. Another example of an I-shaped individual would be the electronics and communication engineer who will design the entire software programming of the machine, right? Now, if you see, these kind of I-shaped individuals work in silos, right? So let's say the packaging engineer doesn't know how electronics and communications happens in the machine. Similarly, the electronics and communication engineer doesn't really know the head or tail of the packaging process. But however, when you look at the T-shaped individual who is the machine design engineer, this person does not only have a good understanding of the overall machine design, but also understands the way the machine will interact with raw material, the packaging material, the electronics and communications programming, etc., etc. Okay. Now, in a project, both of these entities of T-shaped individual and I-shaped individual are very, very important, and you need to have a good mix of both of these individuals in a team. Okay. So now with that, since we have understood the basic of T-shaped and I-shaped individuals, let's go back to the question. And now I'm sure that it will become very easy for us to answer this question. Okay. Now, how could Remy be sure whether the Agile team possesses a good representation of T-shaped individuals? Okay, mark that the question is asking for T-shaped individuals, not I-shaped, right? Option A, reduction in reassignment of task. Okay, now this is a good option because if you have more T-shaped individuals, since they're able to execute the basics of any task in a project, you will have minimum reassignment happening as part of your project. Okay, so let's hold this option for now. Option B, increase in number of story points. That's a very broad option, guys, and that is quite irrelevant, so that we'll eliminate, because increasing in number of story points happen when you do not have a basic understanding of the scope of the project. Okay, or you want to break down a complex story point into multiple simple story points. Okay, but it is irrelevant with respect to the project scenario. Option C, decrease in identified blockers. Again, that's a irrelevant option, guys. Decrease in identified blockers can happen as part of the sprint review meeting, as part of retrospective, etc., etc. But that doesn't really concern the scenario which we have in this question. Option D, increasing participation of subject matter experts. Okay, now this is very interesting. You tell me that when you need to depend as a project manager on subject matter experts a lot. Okay, and that is when you have a lot of I-shaped individuals, and you as a project manager need to go to solve one issue with one SME, another issue with another SME, another issue with another SME. So this is sort of a SME driven culture, which is a subject matter expert driven culture, where you are working with a lot of I-shaped individuals who might be excellent in their domain, but they really do not have the understanding of how different domains interact with each other. So this generally happens when you have a lot of I-shaped individuals in the team and do not have any T-shaped individuals who will be responsible to manage the interactions between different domains. So that is why option D is also incorrect, and the correct answer to this question is option A, which is a reduction in reassignment of the task. And as I mentioned, this will happen when you will have a good representation of T-shaped individuals in your project team, because you will less likely start depending on the subject matter experts for basic levels of domain interactions. Okay, now, you might be requiring the help of the subject matter experts when it's a very specific issue or a problem that you are trying to solve. But for overall day-to-day working, you will start depending less on subject matter experts who are I-shaped individuals if you have a good representation of T-shaped individuals in your project team. So that is why the correct answer is option A. Question number 5, guys. Please read the question. This is the scenario. This is the stem of the question, and choose an option from A, B, C, or D before we solve it together. You can pause the video here if you wish to. Right, so let's start. A project plans to develop a holiday resort in the Fiji Islands with 5-star state-of-the-art villas spread across 3 islands within a 5-kilometer radius. The contract for the design of the villas is ready for sign off. Note that this is the contract for the design of the villas, right? Not the construction of the villas, okay? And the design is about to start, okay? So we are talking about a contract which is being planned in the design phase of the project, okay? However, some ongoing geological and soil testing studies in one of the islands, which is Jade Island here, has highlighted a major ground subsidence risk in that island. Okay, now ground subsidence risk means, guys, that the risk of a construction going on top of that soil might have a risk of sinking down over time. Okay, and that might cause some minor damages, which is like cracks or dents in the building, or in a more extreme scenario it can cause an entire building to collapse. Okay, hence the design of the villa, which was initially planned to be constructed on Jade Island, now needs complete redesign. Okay, now in the PMP exam, guys, you do not need any typical subjective knowledge. Okay, so for example, this question can be extrapolated to a civil engineering based knowledge. You don't need that, but at least you know the basic premise that there is some issue which has been identified with the soil testing report of the location where the villa is getting constructed, and for that it needs a complete redesign because this new design doesn't take the new factor into account. Okay, that is enough for you to answer this question correctly. You need not to have any topic specific knowledge for any question in the PMP exam. What should the principal designer of the project do to manage this scenario effectively? Okay, so let's say the principal designer here is the project manager. Okay, so the client is the company who is constructing the villas, and you as a principal designer, you are the project manager designer who is actually designing the villas, and you need to take a decision now that with this new data point that has come with the soil testing report, how you should manage this scenario effectively. Okay, so let's look at the options. Go ahead with the design of the villas in Jade Island as planned and cover the risks via a design liability insurance. Now, this is a project management specific term, guys. So you need to understand what is a design liability insurance. Okay, so this design liability insurance is a classic example of a risk transfer. Okay, when a company does a design, and to mitigate the risks in that design, the design organization takes up an insurance. Okay, so for example, tomorrow if something goes wrong with the design, okay, and the company is fined, the insurance company will take up the fine on behalf of the company, and for that the insurance company will charge some premium to the company for, let's say, 5 years or 6 years till the design remains valid. Okay, now the thing is, for such a scenario where the ground subsidence risk has been identified and you are still asking an insurance company to provide you insurance versus the base design, this is not practicable, guys. Okay, no insurance company will want to insure such a design which has a big risk of ground subsidence which has not been mitigated effectively. So even if as a project manager you want to transfer that risk to an insurance company, no insurance company will be willing to take it up. So covering this risk is impossible for you, okay, via a design liability insurance. So design liability insurance always happens for a robust, effective, data driven, documented, and a design that follows the relevant standards of the industry or the country. Okay, so very important. So that way option A is incorrect. Option B, raise a change request to assess the impact of the ground subsidence risk. This part is okay. I am not debating this topic that you need to raise a change request to assess the impact. However, let's read the second part of this option, and pause design work till the change request gets approved. Okay, so this is incorrect, guys. Okay, because in the PMP exam, or let's say in the PMP philosophy, you should always go with an option which is not directly affecting the project schedule, okay, without mitigating the risks effectively. Here, basically, what you are saying is, look, I will raise a change request, but I will put everything on hold till that gets approved. Okay, so this is not a PMP way of how a project manager should behave. Okay, so that is why this option B is also incorrect. Let's read option C. Plan the design for the rest of the villas as planned and plan the design of the villa in Jade Island with an agile based iteration. This looks like a good option to me because what you are saying is for the first two islands, you will go with the base plan or with the base design, and for Jade Island, you will do a agile based iteration where the scope will be exploratory, that you will start with the very simple design works such as interior design or the architectural design, which is not directly affected by the ground subsidence risk. Okay, so that way you are bifurcating the scope, that you are dealing with the simpler and much more defined scope items now till more data is available to you to make a future proof design. And this is a classic example of a exploratory scope of work, which is a agile based work in the end. Okay, so that way this option looks quite good to me. Let's look at option D. Hold back the design of the villa in Jade Island till the entire soil testing and geological assessment is complete. Okay, now this is also incorrect. Okay, because again it is saying that you need to hold back everything till you get all the parameters what you are looking for in line. Okay, now theoretically this might seem okay, but practically or from a PMP philosophy this is not okay, because effectively you are delaying the project where you could have progressed with the project with the scope items which were not directly impacted by the ground subsidence risk. Okay, so that way option D is also incorrect, and the correct answer to this question is option C.
I hope you liked the video. Please press the like button and I'll see you again in the next one.